It wasn't thunder that woke you, not sirens, not the usual chaos of the city outside your window. It was a whisper, softer than thought, louder than memory. You jolted upright as if something had called your name from inside the walls, not out loud, but from beneath the paint, under the floorboards, behind the electricity humming through your apartment. It didn't come with fear. It came with knowing, like a breath that had been waiting years to find your lungs. Chosen one, the warning has already begun. You're not paranoid. You're not overreacting. What you felt wasn't random. It was the first signal. Heaven doesn't shout its messages. Not at first. God whispers to the ones who are listening. And you've always been tuned to the frequency others ignore. You hear what most dismiss. You feel shifts in the atmosphere before others can explain them. That's not a burden. It's evidence. Proof that you are spiritually encoded to detect the divine evacuation notice before it becomes visible to the blind. This city is not just a place on a map. It's a container, a spiritual cage wrapped in architecture and Wi-Fi. It once offered you sanctuary. Now, it pulses with resistance. Every time you walk outside, you feel it. A heaviness in the air, a stiffness in the wind. It's not just pollution, it's prophecy pressing against delay, and God is telling you, leave, not someday, before December. Your feet are standing on soil that's no longer fertile for your future. The streets that once recognized your light now reject it. Have you noticed how people stare longer now? How the air feels stale? How the quiet isn't peace but suppression? It's because your presence disturbs the principalities that have made this place their throne. And you've grown too radiant to be tolerated here much longer. This is not fear-mongering. This is sacred urgency. Before God tears down a structure, he always calls his chosen ones out. Think of Lot. Think of Moses. Think of every story where obedience made the difference between ruin and redemption. The whisper is the beginning of your instructions. And it is not a metaphor. You are meant to go. Not just physically, spiritually, prophetically, geographically. Your obedience is the map. God doesn't give you the whole picture yet. He gives you the stirring. That tension in your chest, that pull when you pass certain streets, that sudden disconnection from people who once felt essential. That's not random loss, that's divine rerouting. You're not being punished, you're being extracted. The city can't hold what you've become. And if you delay, it will try to consume you before you fully awaken. But the whisper has arrived. The clock has started. And heaven is watching to see how you respond. Your exodus doesn't begin when you move. It begins the moment you believe the whisper was real. You always knew this was temporary, didn't you? Even when you signed the lease, even when you painted the walls, learned the shortcuts, memorized the sound of the pipes at night. There was something in your spirit that never fully rooted. You lived here, yes, but you never belonged. That wasn't doubt. That was design. This place was a passage, not a promise. A waiting room disguised as home. Chosen one, God never intended for you to die where you were placed to grow. And now the growth is done. The soil's dried up. The spiritual covering once keeping you safe here has lifted. That's why things feel different lately. That restlessness, that fatigue you can't name. You haven't outgrown the neighborhood, you've outgrown the assignment. What you built here served its season. But heaven doesn't allow a divine frequency to stay stagnant once its resonance has shifted. And yours has shifted. They told you to plant roots. They told you to build here. But they weren't speaking prophetically, they were speaking fearfully. Most people fear movement. They cling to the familiar even when it starts to decay. But you're not most people. You were wired to respond to divine dissonance. The moment the atmosphere changes, your spirit does too. That tension you feel, that's the alarm. And the longer you ignore it, the louder it gets. You've probably tried to explain it away. blamed it on burnout, blamed it on the weather, tried to sleep it off. But you can't shake the truth. This place no longer sees you. The city doesn't dream with you anymore. It feels colder, even in heat, louder, even in silence. The smiles from strangers are thinner. The signs are in everything. Cracked sidewalks, flickering lights, missed buses, people who used to check in and now don't. You're being quietly released. There's no shame in leaving. There's danger in staying. Ask Jonah what happens when you remain somewhere God didn't assign. Ask Lot's wife what happens when you look back. This isn't a threat. It's a mercy. God's giving you a head start before the collapse. Because this city, as it stands, cannot survive the next cycle. And you, chosen one, are not meant to get caught in its breaking. You are meant to carry light to the next place, not to exhaust it trying to resurrect what's already been abandoned by heaven. So why are you still here? Is it comfort, nostalgia, fear? Let it go. God is already making arrangements for your arrival elsewhere. Provision is being aligned. Connections are already dreaming of you, but none of it can activate until you step. This is the part of the story where you move in faith before the map appears. You won't see the bridge until your foot is midair. But God is calling you forward, away from the ashes, into the unknown. You were never meant to stay. The path has already been drawn, not in ink, but in light. Not on paper, but across frequencies your earthly eyes can't see yet. While you've been pacing the floors in anxiety, chosen one, heaven has been orchestrating your exit. Angelic architects have traced your escape through time and spirit. This isn't random. This isn't new. The plan has existed longer than the city itself. You are not just being led out, you're being ushered. The angels assigned to you never left. They've been walking beside you since the moment you arrived here, silent in your peace, loud in your danger. They've shielded you from accidents you never saw, delays that saved your life, people you thought were for you, but turned the moment you outgrew their grip. Every detour, every close call, every no was part of the mapping. You thought you were stuck. You weren't. You were being positioned. The exit isn't through a door, it's through obedience. Chosen one, your next step will never feel logical. That's the point. This is not a journey built by GPS. It's a walk built by trust. Your spirit has been feeling the tension because your instructions are coming from a higher frequency now. And the longer you try to filter it through the language of comfort, the more confused you'll feel. Stop trying to make this make sense to people who were never assigned to your movement. This map isn't public, it's prophetic. You've already seen glimpses, a city name you keep hearing, a location that randomly shows up in dreams, a conversation you overheard that felt planted. These are not coincidences. These are coordinates. Heaven doesn't shout when it can whisper and still be heard. The signs are everywhere, in numbers, patterns, digital glitches, eye contact with strangers that lingers too long. But only the chosen recognize the invitation when it comes cloaked in the ordinary. The exit has a timestamp. You don't have forever. This isn't a fear tactic, it's divine scheduling. The angels have mapped a window, not a highway. If you wait too long, the atmosphere will shift again, and the clarity you're receiving now will fade into noise. That's why the instruction feels urgent. That's why the signs are increasing. That's why you're reading this and feeling something activate in your chest. You are being called now, not when the lease ends, not when they apologize. Now, God always provides a way of escape, but only those who move inherit the miracle. Let the angels do what they've been assigned to do. Follow the impulse. Follow the unrest. Follow the peace that doesn't make sense. That is how heaven speaks. That is how the chosen are moved. And when you step into alignment, roads appear where there were none. Strangers become divine appointments, and what looked like loss becomes launch. The exit is mapped. The coordinates are live. You're not waiting for permission. You're answering a summons. The city knows you, not in love, in calculation. It has memorized the time you leave the house, the route you take to the store, the way you pause at that one corner where the light never seems to change. The building recognizes your footsteps. The systems log your motion. The frequency of your life has been looped through a digital and spiritual grid, not just by machines, but by entities assigned to keep you grounded, distracted, sedated. You think it's just routine, but in the spirit, it's surveillance. Chosen one, you've become predictable, and heaven is calling you to interrupt the loop. What you thought was safety has become programming. The same coffee, the same window, the same locked door, the same thoughts cycling back every night. This is not comfort, this is containment. You were never meant to be decoded by this city, but you've stayed long enough for the atmosphere to build a blueprint of your rhythm. That's why you feel watched. That's why the dreams repeat. That's why small things, flickering lights, repeating numbers, phantom sounds, are starting to spike around you. The system is aware you're waking up. They never feared your presence. They feared your movement. As long as you stayed passive, as long as you blended in, you were tolerated. But something in you shifted. You stopped hiding your light. You started asking deeper questions. You began praying with clarity instead of confusion, and the spiritual surveillance grid noticed. Every chosen one who prepares to exit triggers an alert in the invisible infrastructure of captivity. It's not paranoia, it's prophecy. Now the city is pressing back. Delays are increasing. People you once trusted are growing cold. You feel resistance in your body when you try to move forward. These are not random. They are signs that the veil is thinning, and the city can feel your departure before you've even packed a bag. It knows, not consciously, but energetically, spiritually. The dark systems embedded into its bones are aware of a frequency drop. You are pulling your light back, and they are scrambling. You've already disrupted the pattern by thinking about leaving. That's how powerful your awareness is. Heaven didn't wait for your departure to activate the next step. It was triggered the moment your soul stopped agreeing with stagnation. And now, you're being spiritually untethered, bit by bit, friend by friend, street by street. The emotional cords are snapping. You're not being abandoned, you're being uninstalled. And with every moment you stay, the pattern tries to reassert itself. It offers convenience, nostalgia, fake comfort. But these are just rehearsals, attempts to lure you back into repetition. Do not be seduced by yesterday. The city cannot evolve with you. It was only meant to house the previous version of you, the one who hadn't awakened. Now that you've heard the whisper, now that the angels are mapping your exit, the loop must break, and it will, the moment you step off the script and write your next move in faith. You thought it was just noise, a flock in disarray, early morning chaos, but it wasn't. The birds weren't just chirping, they were warning. They weren't just flying erratically, they were reacting. Nature doesn't lie the way people do. It doesn't filter divine data. It broadcasts it, raw and immediate. And lately, chosen one, the birds have been screaming. They've felt what most humans can't. Their migration patterns are ancient, wired to shifts in magnetic fields, spiritual turbulence, invisible tremors in the grid. And something in your city has begun to rot beneath the surface, not physically, but spiritually. The birds know, the animals know, even the insects have shifted their paths, and all of them, unknowingly, are echoing the same truth. You need to move. your awakening disrupted the ecosystem. The moment your frequency shifted, the moment you stopped spiritually agreeing with the city's rhythm, everything around you began to react. Your energy no longer blends with the grid. Your presence now emits interference. You're not in harmony with this place anymore. You're vibrating higher. And when a chosen one begins to rise, all creation starts either aligning or unraveling. The birds are the first to scream because they remember Eden. They carry the memory of a world untouched by man's distortion. They still speak the original language of instinct, of sky, of divine order. So when the atmosphere fills with frequencies that do not belong, when man builds towers of pride and neglects the sacred, the birds become messengers. And lately, their message has been urgent. You've seen it. Flocks scattering before storms, crows gathering near power lines, a single bird crying at your window in the dead of night. It's not random, it's response. They're sensing a shift in your orbit. They know you're about to leave, and the world around you is adjusting, violently, beautifully, prophetically. The city is no longer safe for your soul, not because of war, but because of spiritual war. The tension isn't always seen, but it's felt. The birds feel it before the first structure falls. They leave before the smoke. They ascend before the flames. And they are screaming now because the atmosphere is growing unstable, not for everyone, but for you. You're marked. Heaven's coordinates are on you, and the old frequency of this place can't comprehend it. That's why the technology malfunctions. That's why the dreams are more vivid. That's why silence doesn't feel like silence anymore. It feels charged. The birds aren't the only messengers, you are too. So listen, when nature starts warning, don't delay. When creation begins crying out, take it seriously. The earth was not created to serve your comfort. It was designed to serve your calling. And now, even the birds are bearing witness. Your spirit has outgrown the skyline. The scream is not chaos. It's a countdown. You didn't see them do it, but it was done. A spiritual marking, invisible to the eye, but blaring across dimensions. They marked your door, chosen one not in ink or paint, but in frequency. A tag, a signal, a silent broadcast. This one is waking up. This one must be watched. And it wasn't God who did it. You weren't home when it happened, but the air felt different when you returned. Heavier, as if the silence had been listening to itself. The light in the hallway flickered. The neighbors didn't look you in the eye. Your pets acted strange. Your own reflection lingered too long in the mirror. You knew something had shifted. The sacred boundary between you and the world had been pierced. This is what happens when light begins to leak through the cracks. Your spiritual glow has been increasing, and the city's old guardians have noticed. These aren't people. These are systems, shadows, watchers assigned to maintain the frequency of sleep, of stagnation, of spiritual sedation. Your awakening set off a signal, and they responded the only way they know how. Surveillance, not through cameras, through patterns. They watch how your energy moves. They monitor the people who approach you. They test the thoughts whispered into your atmosphere. They don't need to break in. All they need is your fear. Fear grants them access. Doubt gives them data. Delay feeds their control. And every time you hesitate to obey God's instruction, the mark on your door pulses brighter, not in threat, but in sadness. A reminder of how close you are to leaving and how desperate they are to keep you. But they marked the wrong one. They thought you'd fold under pressure. They thought the weight of isolation would push you back into spiritual amnesia. But what they didn't know is this: God had already sealed you. Before they marked your threshold, heaven had already inscribed your name in the book of the unshakable. You are not a victim. You are a beacon, and their attempt to tag you has only accelerated your extraction. You don't need to fear their mark. You need to recognize it, because that recognition is your release. This moment, this chapter, is not about paranoia. It's about precision. God is showing you what's been placed around you, so you'll finally stop calling it normal. That exhaustion isn't yours. That dread you feel when approaching home, it's not you. It's resistance pushing against your breakthrough. Even in Egypt, God marked doors. But his mark was protection, a signal to pass over, to shield, to preserve. The enemy mimics what he cannot create. So when you see the counterfeits, you know the original is near. You've been targeted, not because you're weak, but because you're too close to leaving. And when a chosen one prepares to move, the old system panics. They marked your door. Heaven marked your name. Before the signs showed up in your body, before the lights flickered, before the city grew cold around your warmth, it started in your dreams. Don't brush them off. Don't call them coincidence. Those strange landscapes, those repeated symbols, those doors you kept walking through in your sleep, they weren't random. They were divine evacuation notices. And chosen one, you received them long before you knew you'd need them. God always warns the soul before he moves the body. You dreamt of leaving, didn't you? Of trains that wouldn't wait, of planes with one open seat, of roads leading out of a place you couldn't quite name, but somehow always recognized. The scenery didn't match your waking life, but the emotion was unmistakable. Urgency, a knowing, a pull. Your spirit has been rehearsing your departure long before your mind caught up. That's not imagination, that's preparation. Your dreams are not escape, they're instruction. Prophets of the old world received messages in dreams when the waking world was too noisy. And you, surrounded by static, overwhelmed by digital chatter, spiritual distortion in every direction, your instruction came through the only channel still clean, the quiet of sleep. That's why the dreams felt so loud. That's why you woke up breathless, confused, or strangely at peace. God was moving the furniture of your mind while you rested, shifting coordinates, whispering messages in symbols, and you knew they meant something. The same staircase, the same figure calling from the other side, the city crumbling in the background while you climbed higher and higher. You keep saying, it was just a dream, but heaven says, it was your warning. You're not waiting for confirmation, you already received it. You just didn't recognize the language. But now the dreams are changing. They've grown sharper, brighter, less metaphor, more message. You're no longer just watching. You're moving, packing, running, flying. And the places you arrive at in your dreams, the water, the forest, the mountaintop, feel more like home than the bed you wake up in. That's not accident. That's alignment. Your spirit is ahead of your flesh, guiding the way like a torch in the dark. Dreams are often dismissed by those who never learned their power, but chosen one, you know better. You feel better. And God didn't send you that recurring vision for entertainment. He sent it to prepare your legs for walking before you even stood up. The city is cracking beneath your reality, and your dreams are the only part of you not bound to it. They're messages from the other side of the threshold, the future speaking to the present, the map before the move. So write them down, revisit them, ask for more, because when the evacuation begins in the spirit, the dreams are the sirens, and heaven has already started sounding them in you.
You don't even remember their name, just their eyes, the way their words unsettled something in your chest. You brushed it off at the time. Maybe they were being dramatic. Maybe they didn't mean you, but chosen one, they did. That wasn't a random encounter. That was an interception, A prophet tried to warn you in 2014, and you've been carrying the echo of their words ever since. It may have been a stranger at a gas station, a pastor's sermon that hit too specific, a dream someone texted you about, a video you watched late at night that left you shaken for days, but the pattern was unmistakable. Leave, shift, move before the shaking starts. You didn't realize it then, but that was your first dispatch. Heaven was already signaling that this city, this chapter, had an expiration date. And now the date is closer than you think. The message didn't make sense back then because you were still rooted. You had friends here, a routine, a belief that permanence meant purpose. But God knew the timing. He speaks in advance to those he loves. So when the shaking begins, you won't be caught scrambling. You'll be moving in rhythm with the storm. That's why the memory keeps resurfacing now. The prophet's voice is louder in your head than ever before. It's not nostalgia, it's reactivation. Something you buried is being resurrected. Their words were seeds planted in time, and time is now calling them forth. This is how prophecy works. It sleeps until the season it was sent for arrives, and chosen one, the season is here. The world may call them crazy, may call you crazy, but heaven calls it alignment. It was no accident that they found you, that they looked directly into your eyes and said, "You're not supposed to be here much longer." You didn't know how to receive it. Maybe you weren't ready, but they weren't speaking to your comfort. They were speaking to your future. And now, that future is knocking. You might even find their face again soon, in a dream, on a timeline, through a chance encounter that suddenly feels more like a divine follow-up. Prophets don't forget their assignments, and neither does God. He's reminding you now so you won't delay again, because what was a gentle suggestion in 2014 is now a final notice in 2025. You've outlived the reason you were planted here. Staying now isn't growth, it's decay. So go back and find that old journal entry, that text, that voice message you almost deleted, because it wasn't just a message, it was a time capsule. And the moment it's reopened, the path will light up. Prophets don't always wear robes. Sometimes they're the ones you ignored at the mall. The friend who spoke in riddles, the one you blocked because they saw too much. But now you see it too. And what you do with that message next will determine everything. You felt it, haven't you? The heaviness in the air, not just pollution, not just fatigue, a kind of pressure that clings to your skin, seeps into your lungs, clouds your thoughts before you even leave the house. It doesn't lift when the sun rises. It doesn't leave when you pray. It lingers, like a weight you weren't born with. That's not atmosphere, chosen one. That's spiritual smog, and it's thickening. This city isn't just noisy with traffic, it's congested with spirits. Grids built on pride, systems dripping with suppression, frequencies that were harmless once, but now clash violently with your anointing. The smog isn't visible, but it's real. That anxiety you feel in places you once loved, that nausea in crowds, that sudden exhaustion after conversations that used to energize you. These are symptoms of overexposure, not to the city's pollution, but to its spiritual decay. The veil is thinning, and so is the air. The deeper you step into awareness, the more sensitive you become. You're not crazy, you're connected. The reason you can't breathe like before is because your lungs were never meant to inhale what's now being pumped into this atmosphere. This isn't just about carbon, it's about curses, residue from rituals held behind boardroom doors, frequencies launched from towers they told you were for better signal. This city isn't asleep, it's possessed, and the more light you carry, the more you feel it pressing back. You've been protected, but your grace period is closing. God is not cruel, He is precise. He allows discomfort to push His chosen toward the exit.
because if the air remained sweet, you'd never leave. But the smog is not just suffocating your peace. It's starting to slow your movement. It's designed to do that. Keep you tired, keep you unsure, keep you addicted to patterns that feel like home but function like prison. This is not just warfare, it's environmental sabotage of the spirit. And yet, in the middle of it, your light still pierces. That's why you're more drained. You're working harder than you should to maintain peace in a place God is trying to move you from. It's not that your faith is weak. It's that your spirit is obeying a departure your body hasn't caught up to yet. You're still unpacking groceries while heaven is telling you to pack your bags. You don't need to wait until it gets worse. The warnings have already arrived. In your breath, in your restlessness, in your inability to focus like before. These are not flaws, they are forecasts. Your body is the barometer, and the storm is spiritual. You can't rebuke what you're meant to evacuate. This smog isn't sent to destroy you. It's sent to confirm what you already know. The exit is near, the signal is active, and every breath you take is heaven's reminder. This place is no longer safe for your calling. There will be no sirens, no headline, no obvious warning to the public. That's not how spiritual collapses happen. When the grid fails, it won't come with explosions. It will come in silence. Systems will stall, not shatter. Lights will flicker and resume. Signals will drop and return. People will laugh it off, call it a glitch. But you'll know, chosen one. You'll feel it before it's visible. Because the collapse always whispers before it roars. The city you live in runs on more than power. It runs on patterns. Every structure, every routine, every unspoken rule is designed to maintain an unseen rhythm. When that rhythm starts to fracture, the surface still smiles. But underneath, frequencies begin to disconnect. Data gets delayed. Power surges feel personal. You'll notice tech behaving strangely around you. Devices freezing. Streetlights blinking out. Time skipping in unexplainable ways. This is not bad luck. This is prophetic interference. The grid is responding to your awakening. As you elevate, your vibration no longer agrees with the city's infrastructure, and your presence, your prayers, your preparation to leave triggers instability in the web that was built to contain you. They never planned for your departure. They designed the grid to memorize you, not release you. So now, it fights back the only way it can. Quiet sabotage. Chosen one, you are walking through a city whose code is breaking in real time. They won't report this because they don't even understand it. What's happening now isn't electrical, it's spiritual circuitry. A disruption in the energy fields that power, authority, hierarchy, control. And because you're no longer submitting to that current, the grid is starting to short. That's why people are glitching too. Emotions escalating, strangers lashing out for no reason, friends ghosting or acting robotic. That's not just social decay, it's frequency fallout. The people still plugged into the old system are reacting to your disconnection like an allergic response. You're becoming unreadable to them, untrackable. And the more you separate, the more the grid falters around you. But don't panic. This is your confirmation. The city will not burn first. It will blink. Lights will dim in places that used to feel electric. Joy will vanish from once lively spots. People will speak, but their eyes will look elsewhere. It's already happening. You've seen it. That coldness, that emptiness in crowds. It's not decay, it's descent. The fall has begun, not with a scream, but with a flicker. And while they wait for sirens, you'll already be gone. Because the chosen don't need drama to move. They move at the whisper, at the flicker, at the silence before the surge. The quiet collapse is mercy, a gift to those who still listen. So pack while it's still quiet, because when the noise begins, the doors will close behind you. This isn't a suggestion, it's an appointment, and it's already on heaven's calendar. Chosen one, you've been scheduled for extraction, not because you're in danger, but because your mission in this place is complete. What felt like delay was divine alignment. Every no you didn't understand, every closed door, every stalled plan, it was timing, precision. Because God doesn't just deliver you from places, He delivers you through them. You weren't forgotten, you were being positioned. Now, the clock is ticking, the same way soldiers are airlifted out before a battlefield turns. That's you. The city may still seem calm, but the spirit realm sees the storm forming. The angels assigned to your case have already begun to move. Documents are being sealed in heaven. Routes are being cleared. The extraction is in motion. You may not see the full escape plan, but your soul feels it. That's why you've been restless at night. That's why your sleep has turned into travel. That's why you keep hearing the same message from different mouths. It's time. You're not just leaving, you're being carried. There are things you don't have to orchestrate, conversations you don't need to force, connections you don't need to beg for. When heaven schedules your exit, it sends favor ahead of you. It opens doors where there are no hinges. It makes strangers remember your name before you even introduce yourself. This is what divine extraction looks like. Not just movement, but momentum. Not just departure, but deliverance. God isn't waiting on you to be ready. He's waiting on you to respond. You don't have to feel prepared, you only have to be available. Remember, Israel didn't get to pack perfectly before the Exodus. They moved when the signal came, while the bread was still rising, because divine timing doesn't wait for earthly comfort. And right now, the signal is pulsing in your chest, in your dreams, in the words you're reading right now. This is not metaphor. This is your notice. Your obedience is the transportation. The moment you say yes, not with words, but with movement, angels are activated. Provision is dispatched. Routes open in places there were only walls. This isn't just a shift in geography, it's a shift in authority. You're not escaping something, you're ascending into the next phase of your calling. And that kind of upgrade requires extraction, not explanation. You don't owe anyone a reason. Some will ask why you're leaving. Why now? Why so soon? But you're not leaving for them. You're leaving for the ones still waiting to be awakened by your light. And they're not here. They're in the next city, the next space, the next mission. And they're waiting for your arrival like the sky waits for dawn. Chosen one, your window is open, your name is on the manifest, and heaven has already sent the transport. Fire doesn't announce itself with fire. Not first. It begins as heat, a dry air, a silence too tight. You feel it long before you see it, and by the time the smoke rises, it's already too late to walk. You have to run, chosen one. That's what's happening now. The spiritual heat has already started. You've been feeling it in your chest, in your timing, in the way your peace now feels pressed, because fire never starts with flames. It starts with friction. There's been friction between you and this city for a while now. A quiet disagreement between your soul and your surroundings. The places that once embraced you have turned indifferent. Conversations grow shorter. Your ideas feel unwelcome. That's not personal, that's prophetic. You've outgrown the frequency of this region, and what cannot evolve with you will begin to reject you. That rejection isn't punishment, it's protection. God lets the fire warm your skin so you'll stop trying to build a life on ashes. This place is about to burn, not physically but spiritually. The structures built on pride, deception, and control are crumbling, but they won't collapse with noise. They'll smolder first, quietly. Internally, financial systems, emotional ties, false alignments.
You'll notice people panicking without reason, leaders making sudden moves, entire sectors going dark, not from a power outage, but from divine power shifting. And if you stay too long, you'll feel it in your bones. The heat will rise in your decisions. You'll lose clarity. Your body will grow heavy. Opportunities will dry up. Your creativity will stall. Not because you've lost your gift, but because your gift is no longer meant to operate here. The fire consumes whatever remains. But you were never meant to be consumed. You were meant to ascend. You felt the heat already. In the delay, in the sudden resistance, in the way peace now has an expiration date when you try to stay too long in one place. It's because heaven has already moved on, and fire always follows absence. Where God no longer dwells, the atmosphere begins to unravel, and the only way to survive what's coming is to not be here when it ignites. Remember Lot's wife. She didn't burn in the flames. She was paralyzed by hesitation. She turned back, looked too long, and became part of what was being judged. That's the risk of staying once you've been told to leave. The fire won't warn you again. It will simply arrive, and those still rooted in disobedience will be caught in its silence. But you're being called ahead of the smoke, because the fire doesn't start with flames. It starts with a whisper, a warning, a shift in temperature. And the moment you feel it is the moment you move. This isn't the first time you felt this place pulling away from you. It's just the first time you had language for it. But if you look back, quietly, prayerfully, you'll realize something. You've known where you were supposed to go since before you could name it. Because, chosen one, God hid the coordinates in your childhood. It wasn't written on a map. It was etched into memory. The daydreams you couldn't explain, the places that called to you from books, the cities that made your chest ache when you heard their names. You thought it was fantasy. You thought it was just wanderlust. But no, it was the early coding of a destination buried deep inside your spirit. The place of your next assignment was whispered to you before the world had a chance to distort your direction. God always plants the future in your beginnings. The park you visited once as a child and never forgot. The street name that keeps showing up in movies. The recurring setting in your dreams. Mountains, coastlines, windows with golden light. None of it is random. These are seeds, coordinates. They've been patiently waiting in the soil of your subconscious for this exact moment, the moment you'd be ready to follow them. The city you're in now has no record of your origin. It didn't birth your vision, it only housed your waiting. But your destiny isn't tied to where you've been. It's tied to where you're going. And the only way to find it is to look backward long enough to remember the promise hiding behind the innocence. What captivated you before the world told you to be realistic? What drew you before survival became your only compass? That's where the signal lives. Some of the things you thought were just childhood games were actually rehearsals. That mountain you used to draw, that foreign name you used to write on paper for no reason, that imaginary friend with a strange accent, all of them were hints God knew this day would come. The day when the spiritual smog would thicken, when the grid would begin to fail, when your name would be scheduled for extraction, and to make sure you wouldn't miss the path. He hid it inside you. You don't need new instructions. You need to remember the ones he already gave you. The street that makes your heart ache, the climate your body relaxes into without effort, the color of sky that feels like home. It's not just aesthetic, it's alignment. And once you move in that direction, everything will open. Provision, peace, purpose. Like a key finally turning in a lock that's been waiting years to be used. Because the coordinates were never out there. They were always in you. You weren't just born, you were sent. And now, the place you're being sent to is calling back. The exit isn't new, it's remembered. It looked like destiny.
It felt like progress. You were told this city was the dream, a place to rise, to prove yourself, to build. But chosen one, the deeper you walk with God, the clearer you hear it. This city was never on the map of the called, only the map of the tested. This was a checkpoint, not a homeland. You weren't planted here. You were positioned. God allowed it, not to bless the soil beneath you, but to bless the soul within you, to test your discernment, to stretch your identity, to give you just enough illusion to realize you were meant for something higher. And now the illusion is cracking. You thought you were building a future, but you were surviving a simulation. This city fed your gifts just enough to keep you distracted, rewarded your burnout, normalized your exhaustion, clapped for your effort, but never gave you peace. That was the first red flag, because when you're truly called, your location becomes a partner in your purpose, not a parasite to your energy. And this city has been draining you dry. You mistook that drain for discipline, thought the resistance meant you needed to push harder. But not every closed door is a challenge. Some are divine indicators. This is not your land. And when the land doesn't respond to your seed, when no matter how much you plant, the harvest never comes, it's not failure, it's misalignment. You weren't called to conquer this place. You were called to leave it. Look around. The signs have multiplied. Old allies have faded. New doors refuse to open. Time feels warped. Blessings arrive, then vanish. Even your prayers feel like they echo against concrete. Not because you're unheard, but because your answers are waiting in a different zip code. God won't water what He's called you to walk away from. And this city was never built with your future in mind. It was built for containment, for cycle, for control. Its systems reward the numbed, punish the aware. You were celebrated here until you began to see, until your spirit awakened. And then the city turned cold, didn't it? It stopped making room. That wasn't coincidence. That was revelation. The chosen are rarely welcomed by the cities they outgrow. Remember Abraham? He was told to leave without a destination. Just go, because the place God had in mind couldn't be found through logic, only obedience. That's where you are now, at the edge of logic, the edge of comfort, the edge of a city that never truly saw you, only what you could offer before your light got too bright. It was never going to fit you, because it was never built for you. So let the city shrink behind you. Let the noise fade. You were never called to stay here. You were called through here. When the chosen start moving without explaining, when they pack with no visible threat, when they smile during storms and walk away from comfort, that's when the whispers begin. You're being dramatic. You're overthinking it. You should wait and see. But chosen one, you've already seen. And the world always mocks the ones who move before the shaking starts. They'll call you crazy right before it happens, because obedience has always looked like insanity to the spiritually asleep. Noah built a boat in the sun. Abraham left everything without a map. Mary carried a miracle no one could verify. And now, it's your turn to walk in the rhythm of divine logic, the kind that doesn't make sense until the flood comes, until the fire falls, until the sky breaks open, and what you heard becomes what they finally see. You are not crazy. You are connected, and they can't comprehend what you're doing because they weren't given your instruction. They weren't on the frequency when heaven whispered your next move. So of course it looks strange. Of course they roll their eyes. But remember this, you were called, not consulted. There's a moment every chosen one faces, the moment when leaving makes you look unstable. That's the final test, because it's easy to obey when you're understood. It's easy to move when people cheer you on. But God doesn't test your faith with applause. He tests it with silence. with side eyes, with the ache of having to say, "You'll understand later," even when they never do. The enemy always tries to weaponize perception at the brink of your breakthrough. He wants to shame you back into stillness, to make you second-guess what you've already confirmed in your spirit. Don't fall for it. Don't wait for the evidence they demand. You are the evidence. The moment you move in obedience, you trigger the shift. The very shift they said wasn't real. And then they'll come back. They always do. When the power cuts, when the systems fail, when the streets grow quiet, and they remember the one who warned them, the one who walked early, the one who didn't need proof because they had prophecy, you'll be on the other side of the wall by then. Not in arrogance, in alignment. Chosen one, don't waste time defending divine instruction. You were not born to be understood. You were born to be used. And sometimes God uses your boldness to wake up those who refuse to listen. So let them talk, let them doubt, let them question, because their laughter is temporary, but your movement is eternal.
Let them say what they want. Let them call it fear, escapism, weakness. They don't understand what's happening because they weren't called to carry it, but you were. And what looks like running to them is deliverance in disguise. You're not fleeing, you're being lifted. This isn't panic, this is prophecy. There's a holy force moving through your life right now, one that's parting the spiritual waters like it did for Moses. What you thought you'd have to claw your way out of, God is now pulling you from with power and precision. You didn't miss your moment. You've been caught by it, carried by it, because deliverance doesn't always look like a miracle. Sometimes it looks like exit. Think of it. How many times did you try to leave and something held you back? Guilt, finances, logic, love. But now it's as if the very walls are helping you pack. People are letting go. Systems are failing. Doors that once trapped you are unlocking by themselves. That's not coincidence. That's coordination. Heaven is clearing your path. You've crossed the threshold. This isn't about desire anymore. This is about destiny. God waited until the atmosphere was right, until your strength was real, until the old attachments weakened enough that you wouldn't turn back. Because when He delivers someone, He doesn't do it halfway. He moves with finality. He severs ties that once disguised themselves as blessings. You were never meant to escape. You were meant to ascend. Running implies fear. But you, chosen one, are not afraid. You're discerning. You saw the storm before the clouds. You heard the silence before the sirens. You trusted the whisper before the warning became visible. That's not fear. That's faith in motion. And faith always moves ahead of explanation. What feels like a rushed exit is actually a divine timeline unfolding. When Israel left Egypt, it wasn't graceful. It was urgent, fast, unapologetic. But it was deliverance. Because there comes a moment when God says, enough. Enough delay, enough compromise, enough oppression wrapped in convenience. And when that moment comes, deliverance doesn't knock. It pulls. You've been pulled from relationships you thought you needed. Pulled from places you prayed to stay in. Pulled from patterns that used to comfort you. That's not loss. That's heaven doing the heavy lifting. God is rescuing you from everything that was silently undoing your purpose. You're not running. You're being delivered. Let that truth rewrite the story. Let it be the reason you stop apologizing for your departure. You're not leaving because you're weak. You're leaving because you're chosen. Because the soil beneath your feet is no longer fertile for who you're becoming. And because the God who called you out is the same God preparing to usher you into something greater. This is it, the final moment, not just of this message, but of your window. Chosen one, you are standing at the edge of two timelines. One leads to deliverance, the other to delay dressed as comfort. There is no third path, no spiritual loophole. Leave now or stay buried with their plans. Because yes,
They do have plans for you, but they aren't divine. The systems of this city weren't built to honor your anointing. They were built to study it, to drain it, to wrap it in promises of progress while starving you of peace. You've already seen it, how quickly your spark dims here, how your ideas wilt under the weight of distraction, how your body grows weaker the longer you stay. This place does not serve your purpose. It buries it in routine, and if you stay too long, it will bury you too, not with dirt, but with noise, with fake success, with social approval that never translates to spiritual growth. That's how the burial begins. Quiet, soft. They'll clap for your sacrifice. They'll promote your exhaustion. They'll tell you this is what it means to make it. But deep down, you'll know this is not life. This is spiritual sleep. A slow funeral for your calling. But God is not done with you. That's why the warning came. That's why the fire is rising, why the grid is flickering, why even the birds are crying out. Every piece of your world has been touched by the message. It's time to go, not in rebellion, not in panic, but in reverence. Because to stay now would mean agreeing with a blueprint that heaven never authored. You were never supposed to die in their design. That's why you've been waking up at odd hours. Why the dreams won't stop. Why signs follow you even when you try to ignore them. Deliverance doesn't wait forever. It respects your will, but it also draws a line, and you are standing on it now. Leave, and you inherit the promise. Stay, and you inherit their consequences. You already know what's coming. You feel it in your bones. You see it in the patterns. The false calm before the shaking. The smiling collapse. The invisible countdown. Others will pretend not to notice. That's their choice. But you, chosen one, you notice everything. That's your gift. And your gift comes with responsibility. This isn't just about geography, it's about obedience. No, you don't have all the details. Yes, it feels scary, but if you wait until the flames are visible, you've waited too long. God warned you early on purpose. He entrusted you with foresight, and that foresight is your ticket out your ark, your escape route, your exodus. So pack lightly. Don't look back, don't explain. You're not being dramatic, you're being delivered, because if you don't leave now, you won't just lose time, you'll lose yourself.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.